FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and it is President's Day, February 17th, 2020. Well, things are happening just like I told you they were going to. But first, it's time for another Triple Lutz Report, and this is episode 477. The election. We try not to get too much into politics, but in an election year, politics dominates everything. The markets, the economy, it's all about politics. Now, I told you back in 2016 when Trump won that he was going to be handily reelected in 2020. Of course, many of you didn't believe me, but here we are. It's 2020. And it's about to happen. And first, what are your feelings about the election? Is it bothering you? Do you care? How many of you couldn't care less about the election? I want to know. I'd like you to email me, kl@kerrylutz.com. So let's get into this thing. A couple of weeks ago, I told you in the last Triple Lutz Report 476 that it was going to be a Democratic brokered convention. And it's quite simple. If Bernie captures 35 to 40% of all the delegates, he's still not going to have the magic number, which I believe is 1550. Warren is going to stay in till the end, Liawatha, as they like to call her, or Pocahontas, or pick up any of your other pejorative, pathological liar, whatever you like. She's totally inauthentic. She's fake. She should go get herself a beer. I'm going to get me a beer now, too. If you saw that little video, she's just so inauthentic and so fraudulent a candidate as ever was. She is in the pocket of big business. She just pretends not to be. She loves to harass banks, and the banks want payback. They'll never go for her. Her campaign faded once she said we should have health care for illegal aliens, and Bernie, let the felons vote from jail, whatever it is. She's finished. I'm calling Bernie McGovern. Bernie is the McGovern from 1972. And a lot of you out there probably were very young and probably didn't know who McGovern was. But McGovern, his presidential run took place in 1972. George McGovern, Robert Kennedy, who was a front runner, had been assassinated. You could make the argument by the deep state, and that left the Democratic field fractured. They're running against Nixon. Everyone hated Nixon, even the people who voted for him. My father hated Nixon, but he always said, we never had it so good as when Nixon was president. As business was booming, the economy wasn't that good. He did a wage price freeze. The guy didn't know anything about economics. And Milton Friedman, or Milton Keynes, as AOC would refer to him, did not serve him well. He wound up closing the gold window, and then, finally taking us off the last remnants of the gold standard. Nixon, Vietnam, he had the secret plan. That's how he got elected in 1968 to get us out of Vietnam. Of course, his secret plan didn't really exist. He had none. Just drop more bombs. That was his secret plan. And maybe we could have won Vietnam. Maybe we couldn't have. We should have never been there. That much certainly history has shown. Just like Iraq. I was a supporter of the Iraq War. I was taken in by the deep state, by all the hoopla, and really by American imperialism. And now we learned the bitter lesson that not a good idea. Nothing good has come of it, just trillions of dollars wasted. Afghanistan, same thing. Well, we had 9/11. I don't know what happened there, but certainly somebody had to pay the price. And, you can't attack America, knock down the World Trade Centers. I'd spent a lot of time there. I had clients there. I used to take the PATH train from New Jersey. But this nation building thing, like we're going to teach the Afghans how to have a democratic country. No, you take the Taliban out, you take out Osama bin Laden, his terror bases, and then you get the hell out of there. Anyways, so it's all deep state. Look, war is the best business in the world. As my partner Bill said to me, a company in 1 hour in wartime can make more than they make in a year of peacetime. And it's good because you keep evolving the technology of warfare, the weaponry, and then that's probably the U.S.'s largest export now besides food is weaponry. So in any event, I digress. So go back to Bernie McGovern here. So the 1972 field, we had this guy, Edwin Muskie, and he was the front runner. He was a good-looking guy. He was a senator, I think, from Maine, articulate, just a good guy. And if you read Hunter Thompson's book, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, he details how Muskie was like stressed out. Being on a campaign is just a horrible thing. I mean, Trump is the only one I've ever seen who gets energized from it and really gets into it, the enthusiasm. I've never seen any other candidate do it. It's drudgery, it's toil, it's repetition, it's shaking hands, and this is just a repeat of it. So in Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, Hunter Thompson is doing like major amounts of drugs with somebody, and this guy goes out, and when Muskie is up on the stage talking, he grabs Muskie's feet. At least this is what Hunter Thompson said. And Muskie has a major meltdown. And that was the end of the Muskie campaign. So then there was very few people left, and the anti-war sentiment was big. So the Democrats, they were leaning to the left because all of their stable right and moderate candidates were gone. Arguably you could say that Robert Kennedy was a left candidate, because he obviously was against the war, just pro big government, I guess. He had his flaws, but he was gone. So McGovern got it by default. And this was a freaking disaster. He lost every state except Minnesota. He won Minnesota. It was just a shocking defeat. The Democrats didn't know how they were ever going to recover from it. Of course, 4 short years later, we got Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy, he was a peanut farmer from Georgia. They did recover. They came back. Here, we got Bernie McGovern. And the lessons of 1972 are still fresh in those people's minds, in the Democratic elites. The one lesson they took away from it is that no Democratic candidate, no matter how far left they really are, can actually admit it to the people, to the public, and have a reasonable chance of getting elected. So here we are with Bernie McGovern, and then we got Mike Dukakis too, or Mike Dukakis Jr. I'm talking about Bloomberg. Now, Bloomberg is the great white hope of the Democratic Party. He's their last hope to avoid the fate of Bernie McGovern. And then you've got Mayor Pete Mondale. I'm giving them names, last names of spectacular Democratic losers. And Liz Warren, well, she's in a class all by herself. Amy Klobuchar, She's just not going to cut it. She has zero charisma, zero vision. People electing a president, I've said this on many occasions, you've heard me say it, it's that they don't so much vote against something. Yes, they are voting against something, but they have to vote for something, a vision, something, a brighter future, a reason why they should be voting for this candidate. And there is no reason to vote for any of these Democratic candidates other than the fact they are not Donald Trump. Now, remember, in the last Triple Lutz report, I told you that they weren't going to sit idly by and allow Bernie to secure the nomination. It just could never, ever happen. And sure enough, Bloomberg's on the scene. The guy has supposedly spent over $400 million on this election with no end in sight. He's bribing bloggers. So what's going to happen? Well, all of the candidates are going to stay in, including creepy Joe Biden, creepy, sleepy Joe Biden. He's not leaving. He wants a seat at the table of power. Plus, he believes that running for president will immunize him against prosecution for all of his legendary corruption. I don't need to recount it here. All you got to do is go look through what Joe has done with the Ukraine, with China, with Romania, and his son Hunter, dumb son number 2. Unfortunately, dumb son number 1 died, but Hunter is dumb son number 2. And the guy, he's as out of it as his father, whether it's drugs or just living this entitled lifestyle, lifestyles of the elite and famous, doesn't matter. The kid really has no talents. He did make it through law school, probably gentleman C the whole way because of his father, and he passed the bar exam. Who knows how he passed it, but he managed to do that. But it's been a straight downward slope ever since. So Biden will stay in this election regardless how much money he has. He can go call upon his wealthy donors. He used to be known as the senator from MBNA, which was a huge credit card bank in Delaware. In fact, Hunter, when he graduated from college and law school, he got $100,000 a year consultancy for MBNA. Doing what? Who the heck knows? Probably testing out their new credit cards to see if they charged properly in strip clubs. And so Biden will find the money to stay in this race, no matter how hopeless it is. And there's a good chance that Bloomberg will indirectly siphon funds to all of the non-Bernie candidates to keep them in there and keep them splitting the vote. Liz is a Bernie splitter. That's been her purpose from day one. Now, we have to look at this Bernie character a little closer. Besides being a commie, which we know about, he honeymooned, and he was married once before, but in 1988, he honeymooned in Moscow, if you could believe it, and thought that, hey, man, it's so cool. Food lines, man. At least the people are getting food. But in wealthy countries, the wealthy get the food and the poor people just starve. I mean, this guy is twisted, and he's from Vermont. Vermont's a cool place if you like to go skiing in the summer. It's pretty. It's all forests and Second Amendment. You don't even need a carry permit in Vermont. You never have. It's a peculiar state, but yet it's so totally liberal, over the top. You've got the University of Vermont, like a bastion of liberalism, where they have this thing called the naked bike ride. That's in Burlington. That's where Bernie was mayor. He probably started the naked bike ride. That's a bad visual. I apologize. So Bernie, communist, Medicare for all, we can't afford it. Green New Deal, we don't need it and can't afford it. He's basically out to bankrupt the country. The middle of the country, the so-called moderates on any part of the party, the spectrum, they're just not going to vote for this guy. It just can't happen. So Bernie is an automatic loser, and his acolytes, I call them acolytes because they're really way beyond the point of supporters. They actually believe that he can win. And this reminds me of these fanatics like Hunter Thompson, who actually believed that McGovern could win in 1972. Bernie McGovern, he has not a prayer. He will not win. I don't care about the millennials thinking socialism's a great idea. There's just enough of us boomers, Gen Xers, and whatever came after that to stop this from happening. You know, there's still a lot of boomers. Maybe the next election, a bunch of us will die off and he'll be able to pull it off. But Bernie is, the other thing is, the guy is 79 years old and he's going to take office. I think 78 or 79. He'll take office. He'll be 80. He just had a heart attack, myocardial infarction. And how can this guy, he's not physically fit to lead. He's weak when he's attacked by Biden and by the elite. He doesn't defend his supporters. He doesn't defend himself. Look at the last election. Totally sold out. Did 37 appearances for Hillary, and it didn't do her much good, did it? So Bernie is a weak character. He can't stand up for himself. He won't stand up for the people who support him, and he just doesn't have what it takes. Yeah, he does spew out a good line of bull. He gets a lot of enthusiasm at his rallies, but he's not the same Bernie as he was then. Look, you have a heart attack. I don't wish it on anyone. Even with modern medicine now, it still affects you. He's a cantankerous, flaky, old man. And that leads us to Bloomberg. I met Bloomberg. This is so interesting. I met Trump, Bloomberg, and Obama. And Bloomberg, I met him like 15 years ago. I don't know, maybe it was 20-something. Actually, it was about 23 years ago. He had his weekend house was in my town in Westchester, and he used to have his employee parties at his estate there. It was like 12, 14 acres. It was nothing that great. You know, he was worth several billion at the time, not 70 or 60 or 80 that he's worth now. And he was a totally nice guy. And my friend, she was his number 3 or 4 person. Literally, they started off in an office not much bigger than the office, my studio here now. It was like 20 by 40 foot room. And he had just gotten divorced from his wife. And he's telling my friend, "Oh, you can't believe all the women who are after me now." And she looked at him and she just said, "Mike, they're not after you. They're after your money." And evidently that kind of point drove home on Bloomberg, because he never got married again. And he's got a steady girlfriend. Who knows? What he's doing, though, is he's buying bloggers. He's buying websites. By the way, we are available for $20,000 a month. I will say whatever Mayor Mini Mike wants me to say to further his campaign. $20,000 a month. If you're out there listening, we have great demographics for our audience, high income. They are the people you need to get elected, Mini Mike. So please, if anybody from the campaign is listening, please send me an email and let's talk on the phone, kl@kerrylutz.com. Anyway, I digress. But Mayor Mike, before he was mayor of New York, seemed like a good guy. He was like, okay, a bit nerdy, but he was a good guy. And he was extremely bright and ambitious. Hence, the company is, as we know it now, is a real force to be reckoned with, even though probably most of their technology is obsolete. And you could probably create a series of chat rooms that would be more effective. They got into the whole business because there was no price data available for bonds, whether they're corporate, government bonds, treasuries. There was no price data. So he compiled the database, and then it became this whole trading station, and really no trading desk is complete without a Bloomberg, and it carries the news and everything else. They also said they weren't going to follow the presidential campaign. They would only attack Trump. They would not attack Democrats. So Trump right away yanked their press credentials. They were all upset about that. So Bloomberg, here's the strategy. He's already spent $400 million, which leads us to believe that he's willing to spend billions more. Billions. And the fact is, when we get to the convention, he's probably willing to pay $2 to $5 million for each delegate he needs to get. So if he needs 1,500 delegates, it's $1 billion. He'll pay it. And he's bribed the Democratic Party already. They're bankrupt. He put $350,000 into them, kind of like a little bridge loan, not give them too much so they can turn on him, but not give them enough so that they have to come back for more money. And this is what's going to take place. He will bribe anybody and everyone that he needs to get the nomination. So let's assume that he actually gets it, which I think right now it's probably a good chance that he will. I don't think he can beat Trump in the election. He can't attack Trump on racism, on sexism, on homophobia, any of that, because he's guilty of it himself. So what we're looking at is a guy who's going to lose anyway, and not to mention, if they take the nomination away from Bernie, the Bernie bros, that's 2 times they are going to freak out. They might not vote for Trump, but they're not going to show up at the election. So this is what you call a Hobson's choice. If you know about Hobson's choice, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like when you're in traffic and you see that the middle lane is moving faster than your lane, but you have to get off at this exit. There was an exit like this on the FDR Drive, and you could stay in the line and you wait an extra 5 minutes, or you can go into the middle lane, but then you have to cut your way back to the exit, which is very stressful. So you're basically damned if you do and damned if you don't. Usually you try your best to avoid Hobson's choices, but in this case, the Democratic Party has become one big Hobson's choice. So just keep in mind, it's now Bloomberg versus Bernie. Bloomberg's got the money. Follow the money. It's going to be Bloomberg. Hey, just a couple things. So the brilliant Democrats in New York State basically did away. They reformed bail so that you get arrested, they just let you out. And recently, a subway thief, he'd been arrested 139 times. He did a shout out to the Democrats. Thank you so much. I've been arrested 4 times in the past week, and I've been let out every time. Great job. Another person gets let out. It's causing mayhem and murder. And the crazy Democrats in the New York State Assembly don't want to change it. The senators realize this is an unmitigated disaster. It's going to cost us at the ballot box. One of the reasons why the Democrats have been able to flourish so well in New York State is because Rudolph Giuliani and then his successor, Nanny Bloomberg, pretty much put the kibosh on crime, or at least reported crime. How much crime there really is, you never know. Murders certainly down from a peak of 2,250 or so to 300 plus. I mean, New York is the safest big city, but all that's changing. And when people don't feel safe in their homes, they're going to vote those Democrats out, especially with homelessness escalating, people shooting up drugs on the street. This is the case in many of our largest Democrat-controlled cities. So the only reason the Democrats have maintained power in New York is because they kept the lid on crime. Now they are encouraging it with such things as sanctuary cities, no bail policies, not bringing charges for certain crimes like urinating in the street, all the things that enabled Giuliani to make New York City a more civil and livable place. They're reversing all those policies, the so-called broken windows theory of policing. So all of this, it's going to lead to a major debacle in 2020 and 2024 for the Democrats if they don't change their evil ways, which they will not because they never learn from history. Just imagine if Bernie gets the nomination. It will be a cluster you know what. So one other thing about Bloomberg, catch and release. So catch and release is premised on the notion that a cop can look at somebody and based on their body language, their eye movements, etc., could tell if they're up to no good. Well, this got carried to extremes in the minority community in New York, and they would use the flimsiest pretext to stop people, and then they'd act nervous, and then they would frisk them. Now, a good cop never had to pull people out of the street, off the street, indiscriminately. He could pretty much look at the person, see a bulge, believe reasonably they have a gun. This has been upheld by the Supreme Court. A cop's intuition is grounds to stop and talk to a potential suspect. I don't remember the case. It's a big case, but it's basically that very scenario where cop sees a kid, he's looking all over the place, nervous, stops him. And the Supreme Court said, hey, police are professionals. They have the right and the duty to rely upon all their training, intuition, and experience in detecting criminals. This kind of opened up the floodgates. Look, people you don't like, people you don't want to see on the streets, you're prejudiced, whatever, young minority males, they are the vast majority of perpetrators of serious crimes in our cities. Let's not kid ourselves. What Bloomberg said, 95%, I don't think it's that high. I do know in Kansas City, 88% of the murderers several years ago were minorities. But nonetheless, you can't just have pre-crime and say you're black, you're Hispanic, you're young, you're moping around here, therefore we're going to search you because you're a potential criminal. You're just going to create more criminals by doing that. It was successful in taking guns off the street, but that's the thing. Bloomberg didn't do it so much to control crime as to take guns away from citizens. It really was disarmament. New York needs to have liberal carry laws, just like Florida, just like many other states, 36 of them. You need to be able to carry a gun if you are a law-abiding citizen who hasn't gotten into any trouble before and no mental problems. But that's another story for another day. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Spend another Triple Lutz report. Kerry Lutz signing off. And make sure you send us emails, kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feed @KerryLutz, Facebook page is Financial Survival Network, and our home website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Thanks.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.